Hardened Scales. Now, we actually saw this round 1 of the tournament. It did not have a good showing then, but remember, this deck has now put up GP top 8. So this is real. Hardened Scales was kind of a fringe deck last season, but maybe a contender now. That'll be in the hands of Kevin McGinnis. And with that, we will be underway. Todd Anderson is going to be on the play. He's number 6 in the Players' Championship race. Firmly right now, he's definitely got a bit of a cushion to work for his Players' Championship slot. If he can top 8 this event, that should only help him secure that. And some fairly decisive numbers here out of Anderson's list. Interesting thing here has cut entirely from the deck list Manus Rider. This is now an Oach-Ties command deck. 2 copies of Dragon Master Outcast, 3 Soulfire Grandmaster, and 4 Jace Vryn's Prodigy, the only creatures. All right, so over on Kevin's side, it's a turn 1 Servant of the Scale. That's a clear tip-off as to what he's playing. We pass back to Todd. His draw for the turn could not have been better. It's a turn 2 Jace, and he will play that one out. Back over to Kevin. Actually, it was a backup copy of Jace. Todd already starting the game with a Jace in hand. We've seen turn 2 Jace has been just so good this weekend. Kevin, though, an aggro deck, he can maybe play around that, depending on how much removal Todd has. Bant Hardened Scales, not the kind of deck that's really going to kill Jace outside of a Dromoka's Command here. And that is what he'll have. Kevin making the Servant into a 2/2 and attacking in. He gets Todd down to 18. Very important for McGinnis to contain every copy of Jace that shows up. If he forces Todd to fight fair, I think McGinnis has got a great shot in this matchup. But if Anderson's able to flash back removal spells easily, that's going to be very hard for McGinnis to overcome. And this will be another Dromoka's Command for Kevin. Todd here, if he had 2 basics, he could fetch for Fiery Impulse and take out the Servant of the Scale, but is not able to. That Battle End would not come into play untapped. Yeah, he had to open on Sunken Hollow naturally, which prevents him from finding an untapped source of red mana right away. McGinnis knows that that's the case, knows the coast is clear, takes care of the second Jace, and now things appear to be going very well for McGinnis in spite of not having a 3rd land. Yeah, so he doesn't have the 3rd land. Now, because it's a 3/3 Servant to the Scale, that's going to be significantly more difficult, actually, for Todd to interact with. Yeah, his removal spells on the cheap here are 4 copies of Fiery Impulse, and no Spellmaster to be seen just yet. Yeah, could have a Crackling Doom, perhaps. Maybe not in hand. Going to go ahead and play a land and a Soulfire Grandmaster and a Dragon Master Outcast. He'll pass back. We go over to Kevin. Does he hit the land? I do not believe so, but he does pick up a copy of Feet of Resistance. And that's a card that we haven't really seen too much of since Heroic of last season. But nice play here. Hangerback Walker from Kevin. And now Servant to the Scale, a lot more dangerous. Todd really doesn't want to kill it at this point. That doesn't play well with Hangerback at all. Nope. Todd down to 11 from Servant hits. But Anderson here is really testing McGinnis' capacity to answer everything. It feels like all of these creatures that Anderson's putting on the table, the Jaces, the Soulfire Grandmasters, the Dragon Master Outcast, they all produce substantial advantages if they're left unchecked. And McGinnis only has so many cards that allow him to interact. Yeah, we see on Todd's side, so he has the Outcast and the Soulfire. His hand is Polluted Delta, Fiery Impulse, Fiery Impulse. He's going to go ahead and swing with Soulfire Grandmaster. It's going to gain 2 regardless of whether McGinnis blocks or not. So no block here. 16 and 12 are the life totals. Todd will fetch. And with 5 mana, he can activate Grandmaster and cast Fiery Impulse this turn. Yep, and that's very good for him, slowing down McGinnis' board a little bit, and also just getting a cushion of life here, because once Anderson hits land number 6, Dragon Master Outcast is good to go, and Anderson should be able to stabilize the game fairly easily from there. So he'll go ahead and main phase make that play of buying back Fiery Impulse, killing Hangerback Walker. Kevin left with a Thopter. And Dromoka's Command, number 3 is the draw for Kevin. Now this is really interesting because he knows about Fiery Impulse in Todd's hand. So there's a lot of pressure on him to kill Grandmaster. But if he kills Soulfire Grandmaster, he's also worried about this looping Fiery Impulse thing that's going to happen. I mean, they're both problematic cards. I think you have to get rid of the Dragon Master Outcast unless you're willing to say, I lose to land number 6. Yeah, and he wants to take the opportunity while Todd's tapped out to make one of these plays. Yes. Dromoka's Command. We'll see what the modes are. If you know about Fiery Impulse, I almost imagine you want to put the counter on Servant to the Scale. But he'll go ahead and put a counter on the Thopter and have Servant fight down the Soulfire Grandmaster, and he'll swing in for 5. Yeah, my preference there facing against Fiery Impulse is just simply to try to make one thing as large as possible unless you're pushing something to 3 toughness or greater. Yeah, well, there's not too much of an investment of putting a lot of counters on Servant to the Scale. I mean, if Todd does kill it, well, you get all the counters a second time.
Yep.
Yeah, you're right. I don't see the reason of putting a counter on a Thopter unless you're getting it out of range of Impulse, which is not. Todd's draft for the turn was not land 6. It was better, though. It was a copy of Dig Through Time, so if he wants land 6, he can have that and another spell to boot. Looks like he could take land Silk Wrap. It's pretty attractive here.
It's a solid looking turn, and you're really putting McGinnis on removal spell or bust.
He's already used 3 copies of Dromoka's Command. That's typically the only removal spell the deck plays. And that's what he's going to keep. Here's land. Here's Silk Wrap on Servant to the Scale. Swing for 1. McGinnis at 15. Can he draw the 4th Dromoka's Command? If not, he'll have to beat through an army of dragons. Draw for the turn. Not a land, not a Dromoka's Command. Swing for 2 puts Todd down to 8. And a pass of the turn. That is not going to do it. Makes a dragon. Todd with a pair of Fiery Impulse still in his hand. Should have this locked down. Here's a swing of the Dragon Master. Kevin down to 14. Todd, draw for the turn was Jace. He'll play that, leave up double red, and pass back to Kevin. Not much to be done here on Kevin McGinnis' side.
Yeah, if he tries to initiate anything with Feat of Resistance, he knows Anderson can respond with Fiery Impulse.
And he'll go for it. Todd knows about the card. He'll Fiery Impulse down the Thopter.
Yeah, Anderson may not know what McGinnis is trying to set up exactly, but seems good enough to use a shock there.
Yeah,
so.
I'm surprised McGinnis went for that play when both players know about the Fiery Impulse.
Can't take it with you.
Yeah. If you want to make that play, I think Kevin is better served to make that main phase and just hit for the extra damage and pass.
Yep.
And there's land 3 for Kevin, but it may be too little too late. Dragon Master Outcast already is bringing along a horde of flyers. We look over at Kevin's hand. He has cards like Mana Gorge or Hydra. That's what he'll play, but that is not going to be enough at this point. And you see Todd, he has a Fiery Impulse in hand and doesn't even elect to play it. He can just do that next turn. He'll tap Jace. That's card 5. His draws Utter End. That should seal this one up. Jace will flip. Give flashback to Fiery Impulse. There's the Hydra gone. Here's a swing for 6. Kevin dropping down to 7. With Utter End and Fiery Impulse up, Todd should take this one on the next attack. Kevin surveys the hand. A lot of damage in the air. He doesn't have any kill spells left.
Now, this was a fairly, we're tuning, if you're tuning in now, this looks like the game was never close, but this was a back and forth affair there for a little while, and I think if McGinnis had found land number 3 on time, it could have been a very different outcome. But once Dragon Master Outcast got to untap with the 6th land, there's really no way for a deck like Hardened Scales to catch up.
Yeah, I mean, Kevin did have the Dromoka's Command for the turn 2 Jace and the turn 3 Jace, which is exactly where he wants to be. I mean, Dragon Master Outcast, though, is just too much at this point. Swing in from Todd. And that will take care of the game. Game 1 over to Todd Anderson with Jeskai Black. Good starting hand. A mixture of Jaces and Fiery Impulses helped stem the early game. And Dragon Master Outcast took it down late.
And what I really liked from Todd's deck that game is all the creatures mattered. You know, he's really overloading a deck like Green White or Ban's ability to kill creatures, and everything needs to get killed. You can't really play through Soulfire Grandmaster, and the other threats are even worse, Jason, Dragon Master, Outcast.
Yeah, and that's really some of the impressive part about Jeskai. It's a deck full of 1 and 2 drops. You look at like Dragon Master Outcast, Soulfire Grandmaster, Jace Vryn's Prodigy. They're, it's rare that you have so many cheap creatures that are must-kill threats, but Jeskai does a great job of doing it.
And they're also all threats that age very well. They're 2-mana creatures that are still potent on turn 8, which makes the synergy with Ojutai's Command very, very good.
Yeah, absolutely. These players are going to get ready for post-board games, starting with Todd Anderson's side. You see copies of Arishan Cleric, Infinite Obliteration, Radiant Flames, Mastery the Unseen, Erase, Felidar Cub, Dispel, Disdainful Stroke, Painful Truths, Virulent Plague. Now he's against a deck that's basically just trying to get in on one or two very large threats. How many of these are helpful?
Well, I like the copies of Radiant Flames. I also think he wants some anti-enchantment measures here because you could expect that Hardened Scales and probably Master the Unseen is in McGinnis' sideboard. So I think the Erase and or the Felidar Cup will probably come in too.
All right, on Kevin's side, he has Hidden Dragon Slayer, Surge of Righteousness, Display of Dominance, Evolutionary Leap, Arishan Cleric, Inspiring Call, that's one we don't see all that often, Feet of Resistance, Master the Unseen, and Winds of Kalsisma.
I'm not too stoked about any of this stuff. It's possible he'll bring in the Surge of Righteousness, just assuming that there are copies of Manus Rider in the deck here. But there are not a whole lot of great sideboard options here.
So what are your thoughts on a card like Inspiring Call? This is one that puts a 1/1 counter on all creatures with 1/1 counters.
It's okay. I think it kind of assumes that things are already going fairly well for you. I like that card much more against other Bant decks or decks that aren't really contesting your board here, but Anderson's sideboarding into a lot of removal most likely.
Yeah, may not be that great of protection.
A card that I could see coming in here is Evolutionary Leap. If you're expecting Anderson to be playing with more sweepers and more spot removal spells, Evolutionary Leap does a lot to take the sting out of that. So maybe that's an option here for McGinnis.
Yeah, certainly if a player's recurring kill spells at you, if you just keep turning your creatures into additional creatures, Evolutionary Leap can be pretty good.
And the synergy with Hangerback Walker is very, very good. So I wouldn't be surprised for McGinnis to bring that in. And if Anderson's expecting that card to come in here, then the Erase and the one Felidar Cub in his sideboard become even more valuable.
Interesting to see the post-board games. The players getting ready. Remember, we're talking about the Players' Championship race. This is as we wrap up Season 4. One thing we've been doing in Season 4, we've been doing our parody playmats that come out each season. We have the Hoppin' Rabbit Master is the current one that we're giving away. You see this one. It is one Master of Rabbits with a whole bunch of hordes of them that come and attack, much like Goblin Rabble Master, but they're furry companions. You can get this limited edition of playmat by playing in any of our open series from now until December 5th. We don't have one next week because of Grand Prix Atlanta, but we still have the 3 weeks after that. So if you do want to get these, come out to one of the Star City Games open series events this year.
And keep in mind, they are free. They are simply free with entry on site whenever you register for one of our 2-day $20,000 open series events, all the way through the open series event in Denver.
Players ready. We start game 2. McGinnis this time is on the play. Had a turn 1 Servant of the Scale and many Dramoka's commands last game, but was never able to get off 2 lands. Maybe starting much the same. This time it'll be on the namesake enchantment. That will be Hardened Scales. So Todd passes back. He has a turn 2 Jace in the waiting, along with Felidar Cub, so he actually does have an answer to Hardened Scales at the ready.
Very important. Turn 1 Hardened Scales here, backed up by any curve of creatures that is triggering the Hardened Scales. I mean, that's the explosive draw. That's the reason you play something like this.
On 2 lands, Kevin could start using Hardened Scales with something like Hangerback Walker. And that's what's going to be. Thanks to the enchantment, it comes into play with an extra counter as a 2/2. Yeah.
I appreciate the effort. And this is the real combo of the deck here, these 2 cards in tandem. Because then you start activating your Hangerback Walker, it's for 2.
If Todd doesn't blow that up right away, the Hangerback Walker would immediately turn into a 4/4. All right, Kevin can swing, though. 2 damage will put Todd down to 18. Another Hangerback Walker on 1. For the second game in a row, Kevin is stuck on 2 lands. This one makes a lot more sense to me, however. You know, with the Hardened Scales, if it hadn't been removed by Felidar Cub, I don't know if it would have mattered that he didn't have any more lands.
Yeah, he would have had more than enough to operate just on that alone.
But as it is, he's stuck on 2 yet again. Jace Vryn's Prodigy was the play from Todd.
Hardened Scales, 2 lands, one of which makes green, one of which makes right. And Hangerback Walker, I'm never going to send back. But this is going to happen a reasonable percentage of the time when you keep that hand.
Looks through it. Kevin could swing 1 or both, depending on if he thinks he'll have the mana to pump Hangerback Walker. There's an open red mana, so he has to watch out for Fiery Impulse. And just the 2/2 will attack. So Todd will go down to 16. And it's going to be Servant of the Scale post-combat for Kevin. That's a 1/1, and he'll pass. Todd will untap and continue playing. Jace in play. Still at a healthy 16 life. Without the explosiveness of Hardened Scales, Kevin's curve of creatures is fairly small. You know, it's 2/2s into 1/1s.
And Anderson has removal that exiles, especially Utter End, which does a lot to take the sting out of Hangerback Walker and some of the other threats in Hardened Scales decks. So when the game isn't being played at that fast of a pace, like it is right now, he has the time to cast Utter End without falling too far behind.
All right, so Utter End's the 2/2 Hangerback. On the end step, Kevin makes the other Hangerback into a 2/2, pumps that. And still no land 3 for Kevin, but he did draw another copy of Hardened Scales.
So it's not too bad for McGinnis here to play the Hardened Scales and activate the Hangerback Walker. But if Anderson is able to get Jace flipped over, which should not be hard that turn, in fact, he has it on the table.
Yeah, a fetch land would do it. Then, yeah. Or actually, you would just do it by itself. It can tap, flip, bring back Utter End.
Take care of the Hangerback Walker, and then McGinnis is again on 2 lands and nothing in play against Jace.
Yeah, not too much, not actually that big of a threat. See Jace blocks and loots, and Kevin will pass. Another Fiery Impulse from Todd. And it's just really been a story of Kevin sticking on lands both games. He's had reasonable starts, and you see Todd building up toward the same late game. He just continues using removal spells, and now has the Dragon Master Outcast, getting very close to 6 lands. Jace will flip. And I think we may just see a similar set of affairs for Todd. He'll go ahead and give that Utter End flashback. He'll go ahead and then exile Hangerback Walker. And Fiery Impulse, Servant to the Scale. So everything's gone.
Yep, and now Todd still with a removal spell in hand, plus Dragon Master Outcast, and we would just see a repeat of what happened last game.
Yeah, 2/2 Hangerback Walker from McGinnis, but still on 2 lands. Jace will target it. Here's 2 Dragon Master Outcasts from Todd. Well, he's got 6 lands. And still on 2 lands is Kevin McGinnis.
I don't know if it would make a difference if he had lands.
Well,
I mean, his hand's just creatures.
He could Dromoka's Command perhaps one of the Dragon Master Outcasts, but now there's 2 dragons. And that's not going to play at all. And feeling bad here for Kevin. This was a good opening hand for him.
Well, he didn't have any interaction, so even if he had some lands here, the rest of his hand was just more creatures. I think, yes, it would have been a lot closer, but I think this would have been a manageable game from Todd, even if McGinnis' draw was a little bit better.
I mean, absolutely. Todd's hands were no slouch themselves. But you see, cards like Feat of Resistance in Kevin's hand. He's had Avatar of the Resolute the entire game. Those would have been able to do a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Certainly, it would have been helpful to have a 3rd land. Not arguing that point. Would have been nice.
Here's a pass. Todd will make 2 more dragons. Draw. It has 20 power in the air. Here's 10 of it. Kevin will go to 8. And this should do it just on next turn. And I mean, to be fair, Dragon Master Outcast also is just such a great finisher against the Hardened Scales deck. Dragon Master Outcast is a very vulnerable card with a really high payoff. And because Banned Hardened Scales is so low on removal, a lot of times I would think the Dragon Master Outcast would just play out this way. It just has rain to make 5/5s.
And this is the type of deck that can easily just overpower Manus Rider with its best draws. Todd's not messing around with that. All of his creatures are activated powers or effectively activated abilities like Dragon Master Outcast. And so in matchups like this, all he has to do is focus on removal because all of his creatures are going to be good enough.
Cast Fiery Impulse on Hangerback Walker. Buy it back. Just gain some life.
Yeah, just gain 2.
And dragons 5 and 6. Should do it. Kevin does not have kill spells for 2 dragons. And the swing in the air should give the match to Todd Anderson. Hangerback an 8/8. I don't think we're playing to anything here. Okay, he's gonna. Oh no, he can block for a turn. He's gonna Valorous Stance the Hangerback Walker. We'll give him 8 Thopters. That'll keep him alive for a turn.
It's something, and Anderson's just going to respond here with a dig through time. And if he finds a negate, that should do it.
Yeah, and he'll show it. So there we go. Match goes 2-0 to Todd Anderson. Both times his deck very capable of capitalizing on some early mana issues. And for that finish, Todd will lock a spot in day 2 with a 7-1 record.
It's very easy just to focus on McGinnis's missed land drops. And like I said, that didn't help matters there by any stretch. But I think Anderson's threat base is very well set up for this kind of matchup. Everything needs to be answered because they're all cards that combo extremely well with removal spells like Jace and Soulfire Grandmaster, or it's Dragon Master Outcast, which basically wins the game on its own. And these green-white decks only have so much removal they can bring to bear. And as long as Anderson can fend himself off with removal spells for long enough, one of those creatures is going to stick, and the advantage is often going to be insurmountable.
All right, so Todd Anderson, 7 wins, puts him into day 2. For Kevin McGinnis, he'll have another shot at day 2 next round.